5,000 years ago, during the era of despair, humanity was on the brink of extinction, under the suppression and control of the dark demon, Erebus. To save the world from total collapse, 4 great heroes emerged to face Erebus, the genesis of evil. These heroes were Luna, the elf archmage, Dueno, the dwarf master, Aaron, the beastman warrior, and Lycinus, the dragon king. Among them was also a supporter, not hailed as a hero but gifted with healing magic, a man named Kyle. Despite their valiant efforts, the forces of humanity were no match for Erebus. The 4 heroes fought tirelessly, but Erebus's power was overwhelming. The continent was littered with blood and bodies. Eventually, the heroes reached their limits, leaving Kyle, the healer, as the last man standing. Desperately, he tended to the wounds of the Dragon King, urging him to save his strength. But the Dragon King, with a pained expression, insisted that Kyle take his dragon heart, the essence of his power, to continue the fight. Kyle refused, angrily shouting that he could heal him, and that he should stop speaking such hopeless words. The Dragon King, however, knew his end was near. Ignoring Kyle's protests, he tore his own heart from his chest and handed it to him, reminding Kyle of their shared dream to save the world. Kyle cursed him, calling him a fool for giving up so easily. With sorrowful eyes, the Dragon King apologized, leaving the burden to Kyle as he took his final breath. At that moment, the remaining 3 heroes, Luna, Aaron, and Dueno, offered Kyle the last of their life essence. With their combined power, Kyle gained the strength of the dragon, the healing arts, the elf's wisdom, and the might of a warrior, all fused within him. Overwhelmed with gratitude and fury, he vowed to avenge their sacrifices. Turning his wrath on Erebus, Kyle declared that even if his body were reduced to ashes, he would consume Erebus's soul and destroy him. For days, Kyle battled Erebus in a climactic fight that shook the heavens and the earth. Finally, with a final devastating blow, he defeated the Genesis of Darkness. Peace was restored to the world, but at great cost. 5,000 years later, in another scene, a woman named Reyna was reading to her child. From the book she read, "On the night when the skies echoed darkness, thanks to the Dragon King's sacrifice who drove away Erebus, the genesis of evil." Her husband chuckled and remarked, "Haven't she read that story 100 times already?" With a smile, Reyna replied, "But Leo loves it the most." As she continued reading, little Leo babbled, "Boo boo baba," causing Reyna to laugh and exclaim that he truly enjoyed the story. However, unbeknownst to her, Leo, who was not merely a child but the reincarnation of Kyle from 5,000 years ago, thought to himself, why does she think he's enjoying this? And what does she mean by what happened 5,000 years ago? He defeated Erebus, so why is he erased from history? Despite his victory over Erebus, Kyle had been forgotten. Reborn as Leo in the present day, no one remembered him or his role in the battle. Instead, the world only honored the fallen heroes. 15 years later, in the Royal School of Delon, a teacher addressed his class and said, "As they all know, they are in the age of heroes, and it has been 5,000 years since the first hero record was established. The 3 worlds, human, elven, and dwarven, have seen many changes, and their school has been chosen to host this year's Lumen's entrance examination. He believes some of them may one day have their names written into the hero record." Amid the lecture, the teacher noticed Leo dozing off. Irritated, he sarcastically remarked, "Leo must already know all the course materials, seeing as he's sleeping during the lesson. Let's test that knowledge, shall we?" He then asked Leo, 5,000 years ago, what ritual did one undergo to be called a hero? Leo groggily stood up, paused for a moment, and replied, 5,000 years ago, if you just made a name for yourself, people would worship you on their own." With a sigh, the teacher dismissed Leo's response, leaving the class chuckling at his expense. The teacher then asked if anyone else was willing to answer. A boy raised his hand and said, "In ancient times there was no way to be acknowledged by the gods, so only the holy rituals were used to select heroes." The teacher responded, "That is correct, excellent." He introduced the boy as Gullivan, a young man often perceived as brilliant. Gullivan was hailed as the greatest magic genius of the kingdom, belonging to the prestigious House of Troughton. The teacher further mentioned that high hopes were placed on Gullivan for the upcoming Lumen entrance exam. As they continued talking, Leo, who had actually experienced the war 5,000 years ago, muttered to himself, "Meeting gods was a piece of cake back then. Holy rituals, my ass." He thought bitterly about the hero record, a miraculous gift from the gods to the lower world to celebrate the great heroes who faced Erebus. Leo, one of those heroes, felt a sting of injustice. Why was he treated as though he never existed, he wondered. He was the one who defeated Erebus, yet history had forgotten him. Now reincarnated as Leo, the great hero Kyle had been erased from records. As Leo closed his book in frustration, students began clamoring. They pointed at the window where someone excitedly exclaimed, "That's the emblem of the Zerdinga clan!" Among them was Celia Zerdinga, a member of the famous and influential family. The teacher promptly announced that all students were to gather in the auditorium for a mandated assembly, as the school was being visited by the Zerdinga clan. As the teacher spoke, Leo stood up. Gullivan teased, "Are you going to try and get noticed by the Zerdingas?" But Leo replied nonchalantly that he was going home, claiming no interest in such matters. This comment bruised Gullivan's pride, and he shouted, "Me neither, he's just going to check out Celia as a rival, nothing more." With a sarcastic smile, Leo responded, Of course. Later, Leo returned home and began training alone. He reflected on how the skills he reincarnated with were too advanced for his current body. The only way to handle this power is through diligent training, he told himself. Despite the challenges, he admitted that this body was far superior to his previous one. As he trained, a voice interrupted his thoughts. His mother, Reina, suddenly attacked him, forcing him to block her strike. "Ambushing me like that is terrifying," Leo complained. Reina smiled and said, "It's been a while since they sparred." She told him that losing his edge won't cut it for the Lumen entrance exam. This is his final test. He should defend himself seriously. With a grin, Reina launched another attack. Leo dodged, sweat dripping as he asked, "Isn't this a bit too much tough love?" Reina smirked and said, "Isn't he blocking all her attacks?" But then, she realized her strikes might be too intense for him. Just as she delivered a powerful blow, Leo dodged and disarmed her, pointing his sword at her in triumph. Surprised by his strength, Reina asked, "How far does his talent go?" After recovering, she inquired if Leo was still set on joining the Lumen Academy. He replied, "Yes, of course." Only Leo knows this, but the Lumen Academy likely held remnants of Kyle's records, so that's why Leo wants to go there. Reina informed Leo that the Zerdinga clan would be staying at their mansion for a week. Surprised, Leo asked why. Reina explained that she requested their assistance in teaching Leo the Zerdinga aura technique, which would help him prepare for the academy. Smiling, Leo thought to himself, he'll get admitted to Lumen this year, not next. The next day, a carriage arrived at the mansion. Celia Zerdinga, also known as the Sword Princess, stepped out, annoyed by her uncle's decision to stay there rather than in a hotel. Celia grumbled, wanting to focus on the Lumen entrance exam. Her uncle, Zeiss Zerdinga, the clan's vice-patriarch, teased her and asked if she isn't curious about Leo, the boy who supposedly has no interest in their clan. Celia dismissed the idea, saying, "If he can't even use aura, he's probably not worth her time." Zeus chuckled. She shouldn't underestimate him, he might surprise her. They entered the mansion's visiting hall and were greeted by Lady Reina Plav and her husband, the head of the household. Reina welcomed them with her usual grace, preparing for what would undoubtedly be an eventful week. Zeiss then requested Celia to introduce herself. Stepping forward, Celia stated her name and thanked the Plav family for graciously opening their home for the week. Reina replied kindly, saying it was nice to meet her as well. Celia, however, couldn't help but notice a striking resemblance between Reina and her father and uncle. She thought to herself that Reina's black hair and red eyes seemed eerily familiar. The thought lingered until Zeiss clarified the mystery, telling Celia that Reina was her aunt. Celia was taken aback. She had never known this connection. Suddenly, everything clicked, and the resemblance now made sense. Later, Zeiss engaged in a conversation with Reina, his elder sister. He mentioned visiting the Royal School of Delen earlier, describing the chaos caused by the swarm of students. However, he noted that Leo seemed to have left for home, uninterested in the commotion. Reina, somewhat apologetic, acknowledged Leo's behavior, suggesting it might have bruised the pride of the Zerdinga family. With a smile, she explained that Leo was often disinterested in anything but training. While sipping tea, Zeiss inquired about Leo, asking what kind of person he was. Reina, with a proud smile, spoke of Leo's unbelievable talents, based on what she had observed. With a now serious tone, Zeiss asked if Reina truly believed Leo was worthy of inheriting the flames of Zerdinga. She assured him that her confidence in Leo's worthiness was genuine and not merely maternal bias. Zeiss, now intrigued, replied with a smile that her confidence piqued his interest, though he would still need to test Leo himself. In the training hall of the mansion, Leo sat meditating, After some time, he opened his eyes and muttered to himself, noting that his body, which he referred to as a vessel, was now ready to hold the essence of his past life. He reflected on the reason he hadn't embraced aura yet. Accepting aura would cause the body to specialize, forfeiting the chance to accumulate mana and soul energy. He recalled how, 5,000 years ago, his inability to completely control the essence of fallen heroes had left behind a seed of disaster. Determined, Leo vowed to master aura perfectly in this life. Celia, observing Leo's decent grasp of basic swordsmanship techniques, offered to guide him further. Introducing herself as Celia Zerdinga, known as the Sword Princess, she asked for his thoughts. Leo, unimpressed, declined her offer, stating he had no interest in receiving guidance from someone of lesser skill. This insulted Celia's pride, and she retorted, demanding if Leo was claiming to be stronger than her. Leo responded calmly, saying that in a fight to the death, she might be stronger since he lacked aura. However, in pure swordsmanship, he was confident he would win. Infuriated, Celia grabbed a wooden sword and challenged Leo to a sparring match. She declared that if she won during their week-long stay, Leo would serve as her servant. Leo, intrigued, countered with the same terms, stating that if he won, she would serve him. The spar began, and Leo's initial attack surprised Celia with its speed and force. Though she noted his technique was impressive, she believed it wasn't enough to defeat her. Taking her stance, she launched her own attack. However, when their swords clashed, she was shocked by Leo's overwhelming strength. Before she could react, Leo delivered another strike that left her vulnerable. Reflexively, Celia activated her aura armor to protect herself. Leo paused, accusing her of cheating, as their sparring agreement focused solely on swordsmanship. Celia claimed it was an unintentional reflex. Leo, undeterred, asserted he would still win regardless. Shocked, Celia questioned his confidence in overcoming her aura with pure swordsmanship. Leo smirked and revealed the magic weight bracelets he had been wearing, which significantly restricted his power. Without the restraints, Leo launched an attack which shattered Celia's aura armor with ease. The force left her unconscious, and the guards carried her away. Meanwhile, Zeiss and Reyna, strolling nearby, witnessed the scene. Reyna called Leo over to introduce himself to Zeiss. With a slight bow, he introduced himself as Leo Plav. Zeiss extended his hand for a handshake, introducing himself as Leo's uncle. When Reyna inquired if Leo had met Celia, the guards carrying the unconscious Celia in the background answered the question. Curious, Zeiss asked the soldiers what had transpired. They explained the outcome of the sparring match, and Zeiss was astonished that Leo defeated Celia without using aura. Zeiss commended Leo's performance and asked about the bet between him and Celia. Leo, with a sly grin, revealed that the loser had to serve the winner for a week. Zeiss, now serious, advised Leo to reconsider, suggesting an alternative reward for his victory. But Leo refused, insisting that Celia, as a Zerdinga, must honor her word. Zeiss, still concerned, offered to teach Leo the Zerdinga family's aura-breathing technique as a compromise, but Leo, smiling confidently, declined again, stating that a reward given solely to shield Celia's pride held no value. Upon hearing this, Zeiss asked Leo with a serious expression, did he really intend to use the direct lineage of the Zerdingers as a servant? And does Leo mean that their oral breathing method is worthless? Leo replied confidently, yes, that is exactly what he meant. Zeiss frowned and questioned, don't he think such a declaration is impudent? Leo, remaining composed, said he had no intention of insulting the Zerdinger family. However, if Zeiss's intention in teaching him the oral breathing method was to reward him for defeating Celia, he would have gladly accepted it. Instead, he felt Zeiss was using the offer to downplay Leo's victory over Celia. He added that Zeiss's actions suggested he believed Celia only lost because she let her guard down. With a bold face, Leo stated that even if Celia had sparred against him at her strongest, he would still have emerged victorious. Zeiss, hearing Leo's confident words, smiled proudly to himself and thought, what a bold child. What an interesting boy. If only Leo were a Zerdinger, it would have been far more entertaining. Zeiss then called for the guards and instructed them to send Celia to the maid's quarters. The guards were shocked at this command. The mighty Celia would serve as a maid for a week? Turning to Leo, Zeiss said, he may call him uncle in unofficial settings. Leo nodded respectfully, replying, yes, uncle. As he left, Zeiss watched Leo closely. Later, he told his elder sister Reyna that since she had requested Leo learn the Zerdinger house's breathing method, he would instead try to convince their eldest brother to teach Leo the Phoenix breath of the clan, a skill considered one of the greatest in the kingdom. In the next scene, Celia stood before Leo in maid attire, saying, "I will be your maid for a week, young Master Leo." With a smile, Leo remarked, "The maid outfit suits you well. Who could have imagined that someone with such fancy style would look great in maid clothes?" Celia, now irritated, replied, "She knows she's beautiful, but it's disgusting to hear him say it like that." Leo laughed and said he hadn't meant to upset her. He added in a sarcastic tone that he had a friend who praised beauty so much that it might have rubbed off on him. Celia sighed and remarked, "So he have a cool friend who knows how to appreciate beauty, unlike him, who knows nothing about it." Leo thought to himself about a friend from 5,000 years ago when he was still known as Kyle. That friend Dueno had been so honest that he once asked two women, Luna and Lisina, to become his nude models because he found them too beautiful to resist sketching. This boldness, however, had earned Dueno a beating from both women. Back in the present, Celia noticed Leo reading a book and asked, "What is he reading? Is it some sort of training manual?" Leo replied, "Yes, he've read it since he was young." Celia felt a little ashamed, realizing that when she was little, all she read were storybooks. She noticed some history books on his shelf and remarked, "It seems like he is really interested in history. The average researcher of the great heroes probably doesn't know as much as him." Leo smiled modestly and said, "You've merely collected books, and it ended up looking this way." Curious, Celia asked, "Why are there so many books about Kyle from 5,000 years ago instead of the other heroes?" Leo explained that among the 4 great heroes, Kyle achieved the most. That's why his story dominates. Celia snapped and said, "Kyle was probably a scammer who claimed the achievements of others. That's what most people think, and of course, she agrees." Leo smirked and said to himself, "So that's what people think of him now, a scammer who stole the glory of the other heroes." Changing the subject, Leo suggested, "Shall they have breakfast and then begin training?" With excitement, Celia replied, "Young master, I'd love to train with you." But deep inside, she smirked evilly, thinking she'll discover the secret behind his strength. As they walked, Leo warned her that the training might be tough. Can she keep up? She yelled indignantly, "I'm Celia Zerdinga, the Sword Princess. Stop underestimating me." However, in the training ground, it didn't take long before Celia was on her knees, exhausted. Leo observed calmly and said that when her stamina hits its limit, her reaction speed slows, creating gaps in her movements. And when that happens, she leaves her back open, like now. Celia replied that abusing her body like this was not helpful at all. Leo then said that young people these days were too weak. He muttered to himself, but Celia caught the words. She stood up abruptly and yelled, "Is he trying to call her weak right now?" Her anger flared as she shouted, "You shouldn't underestimate me, you white-haired bastard." With that, she lunged at him. Leo evaded her attacks effortlessly. With a loud bang, Celia fell to the ground. With frustration, she yelled, "Why can't she win? Why does she keep losing to Leo?" Leo walked up to her and asked, "It's hard, isn't it?" He then removed the bracelet he was wearing, a magic binding bracelet, and handed it to her. Celia accepted it with a begrudging thanks, but as soon as she held it, she collapsed to the ground. The bracelet felt as heavy as a boulder. Leo explained, "This is a bracelet with weight magic. From tomorrow onward, she'll train while wearing it." The next day, Celia struggled to move around the training grounds with the bracelet on. Watching her, Zeiss muttered to himself that although Leo's methods seemed harsh, this would be a good experience for Celia before she attended Lumen Academy. He reasoned that it might be good for her pride to crumble at least once. Zeiss then called out to Leo and approached him. He mentioned he was considering asking the patriarch of the Zerdinga family to allow Leo to inherit the Phoenix breath technique. Hearing this, Leo was stunned. The Phoenix breath? The Zerdinga family's signature aura technique? Leo recalled that only those recognized by the family could inherit it. Could this mean that Zeiss believed he was capable? Celia, however, scoffed. Her father, the patriarch of the Zerdinga family, won't teach him that technique so easily. Zeiss acknowledged this and added, "That's why there's a condition." He told Leo that he would need to pass the Lumen Academy entrance examination. Celia frowned in concern and reminded that the Lumen entrance exam involves actual combat. Leo can't even use aura. It'll be dangerous for him. Leo shrugged and thought, well, he don't have real fight experience in this life, but in his past life, he was practically a warlord who fought against Erebus. Zeiss raised an eyebrow. "So, what's your decision?" Without hesitation, Leo answered, "He'll do it. He'll participate in the Lumen entrance examination. A week later, the day of the Lumen entrance examination arrived. Students from various families gathered in the hall. Many whispered in surprise when they saw Celia. "That's Celia Zerdinga, the Sword Princess," one murmured. "But who's that boy next to her?" Among the crowd, Celia turned to Leo and asked, "Are you nervous, young master?" Leo replied, "Not at all. But isn't it time she stopped calling him young master? She's not his maid anymore." As they spoke, a familiar figure approached. It was Gullivan Tratton. He looked at our MC and said, "Leo can't even handle aura. What is he doing here? Why is he participating in this examination?" But he was ignored. Gullivan turned to Celia with a courteous smile and said, "It's been a while, Lady Celia. How have you been?" Celia, unimpressed, responded coldly, "I'm sorry, but I don't remember you at all." Taking Leo's hand, she declared, "Let's go." As they turned to leave, another voice called out. Celia was surprised to see Abad Llewellyn, a 16-year-old from the Llewellyn family, accompanied by his younger sister Chelsea, age 14. Celia's expression hardened. She whispered to Leo that those two will be taking the same path as them. They absolutely can't lose to them. Leo, unfazed, remarked, "He's from the Plav family, not the Zerdinga clan. She shouldn't include him in her rivalry." Abad approached and asked who's the guy with her. She replied, "This is Leo Plav, a noble from the kingdom of Dalad." Abad smirked. "A small fry, huh?" As they turned to leave, Abad confidently declared, "The top spots in this examination will be ours." Furious, Celia folded her arms and muttered, "Arrogant jerks, she'll crush them thoroughly." Just then, a professor arrived and introduced himself as Albus Zeron, the supervisor for the entrance exam. Celia whispered to Leo, "No way. That's Professor Albi, a hero listed in the hero records." Albi announced, "Instead of the usual entrance exam, he've created a special hero world for this test, and they'll all participate in it simultaneously." With that, he cast a spell, engulfing the students in a dazzling light. Upon seeing this, Leo said to himself that a hero's record isn't just a mere historical record. Its true value lies in its ability to manifest a hero's world. A hero's world is something a hero has truly experienced. Leo thought to himself that this is almost like some kind of hero training system. All the students appeared in the wild forest as a result of the hero's world. The professor informed them that the place is called the Wild Forest, and their objective is simply to survive. Whether they join forces or eliminate each other, they should do whatever it takes to survive. Those who wish to forfeit the test can break the orb they are holding, return to the human world, and go back to the academy, that's all. As Leo stood there, he thought to himself that this place looked familiar. The Wild Forest used to be an elven forest before it was polluted by the Witch Queen Salatna. Most of the students were scared by their surroundings, and one of them exclaimed that he wanted to go back. Another student questioned him, saying everything here is just an illusion, and that he shouldn't be pathetic and should remain still. But Leo, who had prior experience, disagreed. He said to himself that they were wrong. This place was definitely not an illusion. While the hero world may have come from the memories of the examiner, everything happening here was real, and the deadly hazards could easily kill someone. As he was thinking, Leo sensed an attack coming toward him. With a quick movement, he dodged it, and from the shadows a voice called out. The person said they had met before, hadn't they? It turned out to be Chelsea from the Llewellyn family. She smiled and said she was glad to finally have the chance to eliminate someone from the Zerdinga clan. Leo informed her that she was mistaken. He is actually a member of the Plav family. Fuming with anger, Chelsea responded that she had seen Leo with Celia Zerdinga earlier, so she had assumed Leo was also from the Zerdinga clan. Without hesitation, she cast a spell, summoning a wind sickle to strike him. Leo unsheathed his sword and blocked it. Chelsea smiled, impressed by his calm demeanor. "Wow," she said. "He still looks so relaxed even with her in front of him." She began casting a powerful spell and after that sent it toward him, but Leo easily evaded it. With a scowl, Chelsea thought to herself, how did he block it? She didn't sense any aura at all. She wondered if Leo was using an aura of an attribute that was hard to detect. Meanwhile, Leo calmly told her that her attack was too simple. He suggested they join forces instead of wasting energy attacking each other. He explained to Chelsea that, in this examination, the one who survives the longest gets the most points. He also reminded her that, as a sorceress, she needed to pass at least one test in order to pass the examination. With a smile, Chelsea replied that she was a battle mage. a sorceress who engages in direct combat. Leo commented that her wind magic attack was too simple for someone of her caliber. He expected more. Enraged, Chelsea snapped. Is he trying to lecture her? Does he really think he can lecture a direct descendant of the Llewellyn family? With fire in her eyes, she vowed to crush him with her so-called simple attacks. Chelsea combined the windsickle spell with wind arrows and launched them at Leo. But suddenly, Leo disappeared. Chelsea, now nervous, couldn't feel his presence or mana. Where is he? She wondered. Before she could process what was happening, Leo appeared behind her and landed a solid punch on her face. Chelsea collapsed to her knees. With an evil grin, Leo said, "Well then, shall I politely ask you to join forces with me now?" Sometime later, Leo had Chelsea tied to a tree with a fire burning beneath her. It was as if he was preparing her for a grim fate. Everyone knows fire can be used to torture witches and sorceresses. With an evil grin, Leo stood waiting for her to wake up. As time passed, the area grew darker. Chelsea slowly opened her eyes, only to find herself surrounded by fire. She began yelling in panic, demanding to know what was happening and why she was tied to a tree. Leo smirked and asked her if she was ready to cooperate. Chelsea, defiant as ever, snapped back, saying she would never comply. She declared she didn't need anyone but her brother. Chelsea attempted to cast a spell to free herself, but it failed. Her powers were restrained. Leo explained smugly that he casted a skill that restricted magic. However, he secretly knew his mana reserves were low, and the effect wouldn't last long. Chelsea scoffed, declaring she didn't need magic to escape the binds. She claimed she could break free without it. With another evil grin, Leo taunted her, asking if she thought he would give her the chance to focus. He made a series of hand gestures, and the fire flared higher around her. The heat intensified, singeing parts of her clothes. Chelsea shouted for him to stop, but Leo merely warned her to cooperate or face the flames. Feeling cornered, Chelsea finally relented. She promised to cooperate and begged him to extinguish the fire. Still suspicious, Leo demanded that she swear on her family's name. As the fire grew hotter and the pain became unbearable, Chelsea desperately swore on the Llewellyn family name that she would cooperate. Now satisfied, Leo extinguished the flames, smiling to himself. Kids are so easy to manipulate. He untied her, and as she was falling, Leo caught her midair and was like, "Nice to meet you, Mage of Llewellyn." Meanwhile, back at the academy, the professor observed the events unfolding. He was visibly irritated, muttering to himself about the students' lack of readiness. "None of them are up to standard," he grumbled. "How foolish to compete and fight one another instead of working together." However, he did acknowledge a few exceptions. Celia and Abad are the only ones with enough sense to team up and slay monsters efficiently. Still, even Leo Plov surprises him. Torturing Chelsea with fire was immature, but managing to get her cooperation deserves a passing grade. The professor continued, "Leo may lack the power and grace of Celia and Abad, but he's proving to be an unexpected dark horse." Back in the examination world, after slaying several monsters, Chelsea turned to Leo and remarked, she didn't want to say this, but working with someone like him makes things surprisingly comfortable. Curiosity got the better of her, and she asked, "What aura is he using?" She haven't detected any mana from his aura this whole time. Leo shrugged and replied that he don't know how to use aura. Chelsea was baffled. She then demanded, "How is he slaying monsters without it?" Leo explained, "In anything you do, having a good foundation is important. Take wind magic, for example. What does she think is its foundation?" Chelsea got offended, flared up and unleashed one of her most powerful spells, Windbreaker, sending a nearby monster flying. With a smug grin, she turned to Leo and declared, "How dare he lecture her about wind magic? She's a Llewellyn." Leo chuckled and admitted, "He commend her power, but she's using it inefficiently." Chelsea snapped back, calling him ungrateful. But before she could strike him, Leo suddenly raised his hand. "Wait," he said. "Something's wrong." The two noticed strange figures in their surroundings. Corpses, shriveled like mummies. Leo frowned. "He's seen monsters that do this before. These are their victims." Leo then concluded that now he finally understand the conditions to pass this test. Suddenly, Leo felt an attack coming and quickly pushed Chelsea away to protect her. It turned out to be a group of students, and they were dangerously close. They needed to get rid of Chelsea first. Chelsea Llewellyn was the primary target. They saw Leo as a nobody, someone they could easily handle. It turned out to be Gullivan, who had teamed up with a group of students to survive. He yelled that they should attack both of them together. One of the students quickly sprinted and tried to attack Leo, but Leo delivered a punch that sent him to the dream world in an instant. Seeing this, Gullivan was shocked. He had never known Leo to be this strong. He had thought Leo was a nobody. Leo then told Chelsea to watch his back while he fought them off in the front. Both of them stood firm, preparing to face the 5 students. Few minutes, Leo began beating the student who attacked them, showing his strength. All that could be seen was Gullivan running for his life. As he ran, he muttered to himself that he couldn't go out like this. He just needed to find another party, as Leo had defeated the students in his group. While running, Celia noticed him and decided to check what he was fleeing from. She and Abad Llewellyn walked towards the direction Gullivan was coming from and were surprised to see not only monsters, but also students who had been defeated by Leo and Chelsea. Chelsea was relieved to see her brother and hugged him, happy that he was safe. Celia then asked, "Why is Leo with Chelsea?" With a smile, Leo told her that he suggested they cooperate. But Celia wasn't convinced. She said, "There's no way that stubborn girl Chelsea would have agreed to cooperate with Leo." With an evil grin, Leo replied. He convinced her in his own way. Celia asked him what he did to convince her, but Leo only smirked and said, "Trust me, you don't want to know." Then, he began helping the students he had defeated get back on their feet. Chelsea snapped and asked, why is he helping them? Leo replied that they don't need to fight each other anymore. They all need to cooperate to defeat the challenges ahead and survive this world together. They were all surprised and asked what he meant by defeat the world. Leo explained, "There's an anomaly in the wild forests. From the corpses, it's as if their emotions were sucked out, and that's not all. Have they noticed there are fewer monsters around compared to before?" Celia added, "Wow, he's right. It's like the monsters are afraid of something." They speculated that a high-tier monster must have scared the lower monsters in the forest. Since this world was based on the professor's memories, they concluded that when Professor Albie came to this place, he must have defeated a high-tier monster first. Suddenly, Leo felt a surge of energy coming from a distance. The shockwave of energy revealed that the monster had finally shown itself. In another scene, Gullivan was still running, desperately looking for a party to join. He muttered aloud, "No matter what it takes, he's going to make sure Leo fails the exam." But as he ran, he noticed something and fell to the ground in fear. Above him, a huge sticky droplet of saliva landed on his shoulder. When he looked up, he couldn't believe his eyes. It was a gigantic spider, with 8 legs and sharp teeth. As the examination neared its conclusion, the students who had failed bragged about the number of monsters they had defeated. One boasted about taking down 16 monsters, while another claimed he had dealt with 20. On the other hand, Professor Albie was visibly irritated. He remarked that nearly 500 students had taken the exam so far, and all of them had failed. Another professor reminded Albie that, despite the failures, he still needed to select around 100 students, just like other regions. At the moment, only 50 students remained in the test. Professor Albie declared that if the students didn't meet his standards, he was prepared to fail them all. Since Headmaster Callian had entrusted him with overseeing the exam, Albie believed that true heroes could only be found in challenging circumstances. Meanwhile, he noticed that Leo Plav seemed to sense something unusual in the forest. Albie wondered if he could truly conquer the hero world. Back in the examination, in the realm of heroes, the students were running, following Leo's lead. Some muttered about the oppressive darkness surrounding them, making it impossible to see. Suddenly, Celia halted and alerted the group to something ahead, urging them to prepare. She used her fire skill as light, and when she pointed it ahead, they saw the huge monster with Gullivan in its mouth. Abad Llewellyn was about to use his wind spear to save Gullivan, but Leo told him to snap out of it. Instead, Leo instructed him to break Gullivan's crystal to save him, as the monster would shield itself with Gullivan otherwise. Following Leo's advice, they quickly retrieved and shattered the crystal, rescuing Gullivan. The monster, now missing its spiritual anchor, lost its grip on Gullivan. With Gullivan gone, Abad began casting spells to attack the monstrous spider. His wind-based attacks caused significant damage, but within moments, the spider regenerated entirely. The students were stunned. Leo, upon seeing the spider's full form, identified it. He said to himself, just as he thought, "This is Princess Tarantula, a monster from 5,000 years ago." One student, unable to withstand the pressure, launched an attack but was knocked out mid-air and sent flying. Celia confidently announced that she would finish the spider in a single blow. Using her fire spell prominence, she created a hole in the spider's body. To her shock, the spider healed almost instantly. Abad, observing the scene, remarked with calm authority, "The difference in destructive power between a knight and a mage is like night and day." He summoned his powerful spell Rafale, creating a ferocious windstorm that even pushed some students away. However, despite the immense power, his attacks seemed to only graze the spider. As the spider prepared to retaliate, Chelsea intervened, using Windbreaker to deflect the attack and protect her brother. After saving him, she asked if he was okay, and Abad thanked her for her timely assistance. The rest of the students questioned what kind of monster could regenerate so rapidly and resist all their attacks. Leo explained, "This spider is the daughter of Salatna, the queen of Tartarus. It's a monster from the Erebus army that devastated the elf forests 5,000 years ago." The revelation shocked everyone. Leo recalled noticing that Professor Alby's left eye contained the Fairy King's mana, indicating that Alby must have been granted power by the Fairy King long ago. Princess Tarantula had once destroyed the elf forests and devoured the Fairy King's right hand, which bore the Ring of Life, a source of infinite energy. This explained the spider's extraordinary regenerative abilities. Abad, now determined, declared, "If this monster is the key to the test, he'll defeat it himself." "Not to be outdone," Celia retorted. "Says who? She'll be the one to defeat it." Both launched their attacks, but the spider continued regenerating. Leo warned them, "At this rate, it'll just keep regenerating until they run out of mana." Leo then suggested a coordinated attack, but Abad refused, aiming to secure the top score for himself. Celia, equally competitive, insisted she would claim the top spot. Now frustrated, Leo reminded them, if they can't beat this monster, they will all fail. Eventually, they agreed. Abad and Celia began preparing a joint spell, but Abad pointed out that it would take time to set up a powerful enough attack. Suddenly, Leo volunteered to stall the spider, shocking everyone. Celia protested, "That's suicide! He can't even use aura. How will he hold it off?" Leo acknowledged the danger but reassured them that he can buy 5 minutes. He told both of them that fire and wind are natural allies. Use that synergy to craft a spell strong enough to kill it. With a determined smile, Leo approached the spider. As he slashed off one of its legs, he muttered, "It's been a while, monster of Tartarus." The students were in awe of his strength. He continued holding off the spider while Celia and Abad created the spell. After a while, Leo was growing fatigued. Fighting the spider without aura was pushing him to his limits. He called out to Chelsea, instructing her to use her wind magic to send nearby weapons flying toward him, specifically, the weapons of students who had failed. As the spider launched another attack, Leo dodged it, urging Chelsea to hurry. Chelsea asked what type of weapon he needed, and Leo replied, "Any weapon will do." With that, Chelsea sent a sword and a sickle his way, which Leo grabbed mid-air, continuing his relentless assault on the monstrous spider. After their weapons got damaged, Chelsea kept sending Leo new ones, and he caught each one effortlessly, reaching out to grab them as he continued to attack the monster. Most of the students, observing his incredible skill, remarked that Leo should be their age, yet the way he fought resembled the scene of a martial god. Abad, astonished, turned to Celia and said, "So Leo isn't just some small flea after all, he's actually strong." As Leo battled the spider, it managed to graze his face, drawing blood. Instead of feeling pain, Leo smiled with a grin spreading across his face. He thought to himself, "Good, he still have his senses. If he can't stop a big spider like this, his friends in the afterlife would laugh at him." Determined, he vowed to do whatever it took to defeat the creature. When the weapon he was using broke, Leo called out for Chelsea to send another one. However, Chelsea informed him that there were no weapons left. "What?" Leo exclaimed. "What will he fight with now?" Before despair could set in, Celia interjected, announcing that the spell preparations were complete. She instructed Leo to move away, and then, bang! A ferocious combination of fire and wind shot toward the spider, engulfing it, instantly turning it to ashes. They all breathed a sigh of relief as the spider died. From the spider's ashes, a shimmering object fell, the Fairy King's ring. As Leo bent down to retrieve the ring, the system informed them that Professor Alby's test world had been cleared. The group sighed in relief, realizing they had completed the trial. Celia collapsed onto the ground, muttering, "It's over." However, their awe at Leo's endurance lingered. He had single-handedly blocked the monster for 5 whole minutes. "Good job, Leo," Chelsea praised. "What he did was amazing. He looked like a hero from the stories." With a nonchalant expression, Leo asked, "Is that so?" Chelsea nodded enthusiastically. She wanted to become a battle mage, but she needed to improve her close-range combat skills. Will Leo teach her? Celia, overhearing this, muttered with a deadpan expression. She really hoped Chelsea experiences Leo's training just once. She'd definitely want to quit. Ignoring their chatter, Leo walked over to the spider's remains and picked up the Fairy King's ring. As soon as he did, a fairy emerged from it. To his surprise, it was Prince Selid, someone Leo recognized from 5,000 years ago. "Selid, do you remember me? It's me, Kyle?" Leo asked. But the prince only blinked. It turned out that the prince had become the fairy king long ago. And since this world was based on Professor Albie's memories, it made sense. The professor must have defeated the spider and found the ring inside its stomach. It must be the fairy king that granted Professor Albie the Eye of Mana. Just as he was marveling at this, a countdown began for their return to the academy. However, before they could leave, a mysterious voice informed Leo that the reward for clearing the trial was the fairy king's pledge. Leo, surprised, wanted to ask questions, but the countdown reached 0 and they were transported back to the academy. Meanwhile, in another part of the academy, the principal of Lumen Academy, Alian Bidian, a swordmaster, said, "It seems the Western Territories exam is over." The female instructor smacked her forehead and was like, "So fast? The other territories still have so much left to do." She turned to the headmaster. "How many students passed Professor Albie's trial?" The headmaster replied with a calm smile. "Considering this is Albie they're talking about, 40 students passed." 40? That's hardly a lot, she exclaimed. "On the contrary," Alien said, "he was expecting about 10. 40 is quite impressive." The woman asked, "So who got the top spot? Was it Celia Zerdinga or Abad Llewellyn?" With a knowing smile, Alian replied, "Neither. It's a name you haven't heard before, Leo Plov." Back in the aftermath of the trial, most students cheered for Abad and Celia's exceptional performance. Yet, Professor Albie watched Leo in silence and thought to himself, he recommended Leo Plov as the freshman representative. Alian, upon hearing this, mused, for Albie to speak so highly of someone, perhaps Leo has the talent to become a hero. Later, Leo was seen relaxing in a hot bath, steam swirling around him. With a contented sigh, he murmured, "After all that pain, he deserved this." As he soaked, memories of the mysterious figure's words about the Fairy King's pledge surfaced in his mind. As Leo bubbled in the water, he muttered to himself about the peculiar situation he found himself in. When someone clears a living hero's world, they're not supposed to gain a reward, yet somehow, he alone had been given one. He wondered what had just happened. The hero's world was simply a memory from Professor Albie, so how had he still been rewarded? While Leo pondered this, a figure approached him. It was his mother, Reina. She asked him if he knew why she had been expelled from the House of Zerdinga. Leo admitted he didn't. Reina explained that while rescuing a comrade, she had lost her flames of Zerdinga. Yet, not once had she regretted her decision. She told Leo that she wanted him to use his power for the right cause. She then congratulated him on being accepted to Lumen Academy. Through a portal, a magical transport vessel, a voice informed Leo that he had arrived at Lumeria City and reminded him to collect his belongings before disembarking. The city was the center of the world, and within it stood the prestigious Lumen Academy. As Leo looked around the bustling area, a familiar figure approached him. It was his uncle Zeiss. Zeiss asked how Leo had been over the past month after congratulating Leo on passing the entrance exam. Zeiss explained that the House of Zerdinga had been locked in a heated debate over the inheritance of the Phoenix's breath. Leo said he had a guess but wasn't entirely sure. Zeiss confirmed it, explaining that while Reina was no longer a member of the house, Leo was still her son, and the elders were impressed that he had passed the infamous Western Region exam. Zeiss handed Leo a Phoenix key, explaining it was a subspace key. He instructed Leo to stretch out his hand, and a door appeared before him. Within it lay a book with blank pages. Zeiss told him to stain the pages with his blood. After biting his hand, Leo let his blood drop onto the book, which caused figures and writings to appear. Zeiss informed Leo that the book could now only be read by him, but warned that mastering the Zerdinga techniques would not be easy. Still, he had faith in Leo's abilities. Once again, he congratulated him on becoming a member of the House of Zerdinga. Later, at the central plaza of Lumeria, Leo waited for Celia. While waiting, a girl with glasses tripped and dropped a book. She quickly apologized and picked it up, but Leo noticed a photo with her name, Chloe Moella, a fellow freshman at Lumen Academy. Eventually, Leo met Celia, who impatiently asked what had taken him so long. They had a lot to shop for: uniforms, textbooks, and more. Leo apologized, explaining he had met with Uncle Zeiss. Celia, surprised, asked if the House of Zerdinga had reached a decision about the Phoenix inheritance. Instead of answering directly, Leo ignited a massive flame in the shape of a phoenix, asking if this was how to use the power. Celia dropped her bags in shock, wondering how Leo had already begun mastering the phoenix's breath. Leo admitted to himself that it had taken 3 weeks just to get a feel for the secret techniques. Later, at a hangar, they boarded a massive ship as large as the Titanic. The students were in awe of its size. a figure introduced himself as Professor Ein Alandi, the instructor for the freshman night class. He announced that the ship would now depart for Lumen Academy. As the ship sailed, the students celebrated with a feast in honor of passing the entrance exams. While sightseeing with Celia, Leo heard someone call out to them. It was Carl Thomas, an alchemist from the kingdom of Moira. Carl introduced himself, explaining that he sold potions and weapons, and handed them his business card. Our MC introduced himself as Leo Plav, from the kingdom of Delad. Carl, impressed, realized that Leo had passed the Western Region exam, which was no small feat. Leo then remarked how strange it was that the ship's atmosphere was so peaceful, almost uncanny. Celia dismissed his concern, calling it a warm welcome for the freshmen. Carl added that the superiors wouldn't be rough before orientation. However, just as Leo had said, the ship suddenly began to vibrate, and a massive ferocious octopus emerged from the waters. The octopus attacked, causing widespread damage. The students called for Professor Ain, who merely sipped his wine and reminded them they were hero candidates and had to overcome such dangers themselves. Leo urged Celia to stay focused, but she told him to worry about himself. She drew her sword and attempted a fire skill, but the octopus retaliated with a barrage of water, drenching her. Leo informed Celia that the natural behavior of an octopus is to react to heat with a water spray, something she should have already known by now. Suddenly, the octopus began attacking the students, targeting those who couldn't defend themselves. Without hesitation, Leo and Celia rushed toward the creature, fighting ferociously. Carl, who was hiding in the corners, was stunned by the scene. "This is understandable for Celia, since she's the top scorer of the West," he muttered. "But what's the deal with that Leo guy? How is he so strong? How is he fighting like that?" Just as these thoughts crossed his mind, a frozen tentacle fell beside him, sending him into shock and leaving him momentarily paralyzed. He yelled at the person responsible for freezing the tentacle, demanding, "She should watch this, be careful." But as Leo looked up, he realized it was the girl he had seen earlier on Central Street. With her freezing spell, she was attacking the octopus with precision. She coldly remarked, "Why don't they stay in the back if they can't even protect themselves?" Carl, annoyed by her words, muttered, "Geez, the strong never care if the weak get caught up in their battles." However, before he could finish his complaint, another tentacle fell near him. This time, it was caused by Abad and Chelsea Llewellyn, who were using their wind skills to attack the monster. The Llewellyn siblings called out to Celia, declaring, "This competition isn't over. We'll definitely win." Celia shouted back, "The feeling is mutual." Amidst the chaos, the professor remained seated, savoring his wine. He commented that the lake leading to Lumen Academy was teeming with monsters, and that the Kraken, a giant octopus, was a perfect welcoming party. He observed the fight and noted, as expected, the captains from each region stand out. He listed them off: Celia Zerdinga and Abad Llewellyn from the west, Chloe Muller from the north, Walden Tiding from the south, Duran Moira from central, and Chen Xia from the east. However, what intrigued him most was the unknown freshman, Leo. His swordsmanship has no wasted movements, the professor mused. It's as if he can predict the octopus's actions. With a smile, he muttered to himself, "He'll be seeing him soon for some night studies." The ship finally docked at Lumen Academy. Exhausted students disembarked, some vomiting and others barely standing after the intense battle. Carl, out of potions, remarked to himself, he can't believe he ran out of everything he brought. As the professor stepped off the ship, he told the students, they'll need to cross this lake often. Get used to fighting monsters quickly. At the Academy's training grounds, a voice announced the beginning of the entrance ceremony. The professor instructed the students to line up by region, with the top scorers at the front of each row. He added, "The headmaster will now address then now." After a brief moment, the headmaster arrived and said, "New blood has made its way here again, hoping to become heroes." He then said that if they dream of heroism, they should always put themselves on the line and surpass their limits. Those who cannot do so do not belong here. And bang, he slammed his hand onto a table, splitting it in two, leaving the students frozen in shock. Feeling the awkward silence, he wondered if he had gone too far. However, the students remained silent, their expressions unreadable. A teacher broke the silence, announcing a speech from the freshman representative. The whole students murmured in surprise, questioning who this representative could be. The teacher then revealed the representative was Leo Plav. As Leo walked up to the stage, he wondered to himself, did Professor Albee recommend him for this? Holding the speech notes, he addressed the audience. Professors and seniors, the freshmen now enter Lumen Academy as proud members of its ranks. Thank you. The students murmured among themselves, confused about why Leo, an unknown name, was chosen over the top scorers. One student grumbled about Leo's confident demeanor, finding it irritating. The lecturer then asked Leo to share his goals as the freshman representative. Smiling to himself, Leo thought, do they want him to provoke those who almost qualified for this position? He spoke again. If you want my spot, come and take it. His bold declaration stunned the crowd, including the top scorers. He continued, no matter who you are, try to get this position from me. This statement left the audience speechless as Leo stepped off the stage. In the next scene, the Lumen Academy dormitory buzzed with activity as one of the senior students addressed the freshmen. He commended them for their efforts and announced that, starting tomorrow, exploratory classes would begin. For about a week, students could attend any class they desired, regardless of their chosen major. Through this process, they would eventually select the 3 subjects they wanted to specialize in. He advised them to rest early to avoid being late for their first class, and with that, the students dispersed. Walking to his room, Leo Ploff noticed a signboard reading, Room 302. Carl excitedly pointed out that their rooms were next to each other. Brimming with enthusiasm for the next day, Carl told Leo to get a good night's sleep. Leo replied nonchalantly, yeah, they'll see tomorrow. As Leo lay on his bed like an old man, he reflected on his true reason for coming to Lumen Academy. To look for his hero record from when he was Kyle, perhaps even a wish he dared not reveal. The next scene unfolded in the cafeteria, where the freshmen gathered for breakfast. Carl, with his usual cheer, invited Leo to eat together. Leo, maintaining his nonchalant demeanor, agreed. As they sat, a voice called out, freshman representative. It was none other than Duran Moira, the Central Region captain. Duran approached Leo, questioning the sincerity of his bold speech the previous day. Leo replied, he guessed his words yesterday were quite provocative, huh? He supposed that's true if a stranger comes and picks a fight like that. Duran was like, don't you know who I am? The Central Region captain. Despite Duran's rising temper, Leo and Carr ignored him, focusing on their meals. Enraged, Duran slammed the table, scattering food everywhere. But before anyone could react, Leo demonstrated lightning-fast reflexes, catching all the airborne food and skillfully reassembling it into a gourmet burger. With a playful tada, he presented his creation, much to Duran's frustration. Leo calmly reprimanded him, saying, carelessly wasting precious food is unforgivable. Furious, Duran declared he would bring Leo down from his high horse. Just as the tension escalated, Professor Ain intervened, placing a firm hand on both their shoulders. A Central Region captain and the freshman representative, fighting on their first day? They must be eager for what comes next, he said with a knowing smile. Later, the exploratory classes began. In the night department, Professor Aaron stood silently before the students, prompting one of them to nervously excuse themselves. Celia wondered aloud why Leo wasn't present. Moments later, Leo and Duran burst into the room, panting. It seemed the professor had punished them earlier. Celia approached Leo, asking what had happened, and was surprised to learn about his earlier altercation with Duran. Once everyone was settled, Professor Aaron introduced himself as the instructor for first-year night studies. He began his lecture by explaining the 3 powers derived from mana, magic energy, soul energy, and aura. Among these, he noted, aura was the hardest to master due to its loss of mana fluidity during the conversion process. Celia correctly answered his question about this phenomenon, and the professor praised her insight. He then asked Leo how aura was utilized, to which Leo confidently replied, by burning mana. Impressed, the professor further inquired about the key factor in burning mana, and Leo answered, stamina. The professor commended Leo, surprised by his understanding despite his lack of formal study. Transitioning to practical training, he demonstrated an aura technique called aura step, walking in midair by concentrating aura into his legs. While many students struggled, Celia quickly grasped the concept and teased Leo, offering to teach him if he called her sister. Leo, unamused, declined, stating that aura principles were straightforward enough. Meanwhile, the professor noticed Duran's lingering anger and devised a way to channel it. He announced a one-on-one running competition between Duran and Leo for the class representative spot. Students buzzed with excitement, speculating on the outcome. Carl, ever the entertainer, encouraged everyone to place bets, hyping the match as a battle between the experienced Central Region captain and the enigmatic freshman representative. As the race began, Duran surged ahead using his lightning aura, taunting Leo with a smirk. Good luck catching up, rookie, he called back. Leo, however, remained focused, ignoring Duran's provocations. Celia watched from the sidelines, doubting Leo's chances since he couldn't use aura step, but secretly hoping he would once again defy expectations. As they were running, the entire student body hailed Duran, exclaiming that, as expected, Duran was cool. Meanwhile, The representative of the freshmen was lagging behind. Another student whispered that it was no surprise Leo had become the representative. He was a scam. They couldn't believe it. But Leo had decided to do something about it. He quickly veered off the lane and towards a wall. Celia, noticing this, asked, "What's going on? What's that idiot Leo doing?" As Leo leapt towards the wall, he stood there, feet blazing with aura. At that moment, Duran was almost at the finish line. And then, bang! Leo used a force so powerful that it shattered the wall and propelled him forward with blazing speed, his body charged with thunder. Duran, taken by surprise, muttered, "What the hell?" Leo passed him, saying, "I'm going first, slowpoke." Duran was in shock, unable to comprehend what just happened. Even the students who had been gossiping about Leo were stunned. They asked themselves, did they all see that? The force alone from Leo shattered the wall. That wasn't a joke. They had always assumed Duran would be the fastest among the first-year students, but to think Leo had beaten him. How had Leo done that? He hadn't learned the aura step. Celia, who was the only one who understood what had just happened, whispered in shock. That wasn't the aura step Leo used. That was the Phoenix step, the skill he inherited from their uncle. She couldn't help but think, seriously, what is with this Leo? On the other hand, Chelsea was ecstatic to see Leo win. "Leo is amazing," she exclaimed. Meanwhile, Professor Ain analyzed the race in silence. He mused that Duran had used his specialty, the lightning aura, to boost his speed, which he had expected, but the speed was mind-blowing. As for Leo Plov, although he had been slower, he had handled his aura much better. He had focused his fire aura into his feet to perform a powerful aura step, an impressive application. Leo walked up to Duran and offered his hand. "Good match," Leo said. If it had been a long-distance race, the result would have been different, but Duran slapped his hand away and told him to get lost. Professor Ain, observing the scene, thought to himself, among this generation's disciples, a hero might finally be born. Chelsea, still in awe, gushed, "Leo, that was amazing. I want to train with you." But Carl, who had been trying to gain her attention, muttered, "Why is Chelsea siding with Leo? She should be paying attention to me too." Celia, folding her arms, replied, "Isn't it obvious, Carl? Leo is awesome. Any girl would follow him." Carl grumbled, "Anyway, since the class is over, they should head to the cafe. He'll buy for everyone today." Leo, with a straight face, replied, "Sorry, but he won't be joining them this time. They can go ahead." The others were surprised and asked, "Where is he going?" Leo simply replied that he would be attending the summoning class. They were confused. Why would a night student attend summoning class? Celia wondered. As Leo was leaving, he thought to himself, there's something he still don't understand. Why did the Fairy King give him a pledge as a reward? The rewards of the hero's world are connected to the strength of the world's owner. The reward he received is linked to summoning, but Professor Albie is a pure magician with nothing to do with summoning. Usually he would have received a magic-related ability. Moreover, to form a contract with a fairy, he would have to go to Fairyland. For now, this reward is useless. Lost in thought, Leo was approached by a girl. "Are you also attending summoning class?" she asked. Turning around, he saw it was Chenzia, the East Captain. "It's nice to meet you, Mr. Leo," she greeted him. Leo smiled. "It's nice to meet you too, Chenzia," she told him. He can call her just Zia. She said she knew he was a night student, but she didn't expect him to have an interest in summoning. Leo replied with a smile. "He's interested in spiritualism." Zia nodded. "Well, they'll be seeing each other more often then." Since she's a summoner, Leo asked her which spirit she made a contract with. Zia showed him her spirit floating around her. She then asked, could he also tell her which spirit he made a contract with? Leo explained, he haven't made a contract yet. Zia was surprised. Really? She paused before adding, if he ever need help, feel free to ask. She can give him some advice about spirit summoning. Leo smiled and said, he'll count on her. Curious, he asked, how old is she? She said she's 17, and she remembered Leo must be around 15 when she saw him talking to Celia. Leo, amazed, thought, wow, 17? She looks younger than Chelsea, who's only 14. Zia stared at him for a moment before asking, did he just think something rude? Leo quickly denied it, but Zia laughed. Anyway, she was really impressed by his match with Duran. One of these days, Leo should accept her challenge too. With a smile, Leo agreed. Of course. Later, the Summoning Division's exploration class began. As Leo joined, most of the captains glared at him, but he paid them no mind. His attention was focused entirely on the lecturer. Suddenly, a huge figure with long wings appeared in the sky, a black wyvern. The students gasped in surprise. Where did it come from? One student asked. As the wyvern sniffed one student's face, The terrified student shouted, "Get lost!" But a professor appeared and explained, "The wyvern likes you." The professor then announced, "It's nice to meet the first-year students. She's Yura Marin, and she'll be teaching them summoning for the next year." Upon seeing how beautiful the professor was, some of the male students whispered that they wouldn't mind becoming her summon. Leo, amused, commented, "If Dueno were here, he'd have lost his mind at how beautiful the teacher is."